This is an illustrated copy of the Travels of Marco Polo, published in 1299. It tells the story of a great journey to the east. Its narrator is Marco Polo himself, the famous 13th century Italian traveler. In 1271, at the age of 17, Marco Polo embarked with his father and uncle on the ancient Silk Road to China. It would prove to be an 18-year-long odyssey into another world. In 1279, Marco Polo arrived in the southern Song capital, Xingzai, which is today's Hangzhou. Xingzai means the place to where the emperor traveled, referring to the southern retreat of the Song after their northern capital was captured by the Jurchens. Their new capital city at Hangzhou was praised by Marco Polo as being the finest and noblest in the world. In 2005, Hangzhou saw another group of people, like Marco Polo, complete an 18 years cultural adventure. This project used digital technology to bring back ancient Chinese paintings scattered around the world and create a magnificent new collection of classical Chinese art. In early 2022, near to the Marco Polo statue, a grand exhibition entitled A Comprehensive Collection of Ancient Chinese Paintings was being readied. Ancient Chinese paintings brought together in digital form will soon be presented to viewers in a magnificent and compelling way.
郭老师，大英博物馆来邮件了。
图像这次来的精度怎么样？
精度还行，这张是带色卡的，然后精度也是够的。这2张就是托尾作业规划的补图。
这些之前都来过。
对。
Today they are celebrating a breakthrough in the compilation of the collection. Thanks to the joint efforts of Chinese and British artists between 2012 and 2022, the precious Chinese painting admonitions of the instructress to the court ladies housed in the British Museum has finally been reunited from start to finish in digital form. The British Museum is world famous. It holds over 23,000 cultural relics and treasures from China. The masterpiece Admonitions of the Instructress to the Court Ladies by the Eastern Jin painter Gu Kaizhi lies quietly in a glass display case. This painting has huge significance for Chinese art history and is one of the treasures of the museum.
这是第一件纸卷本的，能让我们看到，就是说汉晋那个时候我们绘画的技术所达到的那种程度。
The original work by Gu Kaizhi has long been lost. This work is currently the earliest known Tang Dynasty replica. Today, this painting has become an envoy for cultural exchange, but it also reflects a century of national humiliation in modern China. In 1840, the First Opium War broke out. In 1860, during the Second Opium War, Anglo-French Allied forces seized Beijing and burnt down the Summer Palace. This led to the looting of many imperial treasures, a great part of which were taken overseas. In 1900, the Eight-Nation Alliance occupied Beijing, and once again China's national treasures was subject to looting. During the chaos, this painting was acquired by a British officer called Clarence Johnson.Johnson
他拿着这个东西呢，就去了大英博物馆。乾隆时候，这件画的装裱呢是有一个玉轴的。他不认为这个画是什么重要的东西，他这个玉石他认为是个重要的东西。
He was interested in that, but the Department of Medieval Antiquities, to which he brought it, recognized it as very important. So it turns out to be perhaps one of the most important Chinese painting.
所以他就找大英博物馆说：“你给我看看，这个轴子值多少钱呢？”然后就给这个 Johnson 就开价，开的25磅。
Of the original 12 sections, only 9 remain, and aging has led to significant loss of material. The British Museum, for the sake of cultural preservation, cut and mounted this scroll painting in segments. The tail end, depicting pines, bamboo, rocks, and spring by Qing Dynasty painter Zhou Yigui, was also separated from its adjoining section.
100多年了，那时候呢，就是这个丝绸都已经开始风化了的，因为有点干裂，丝绸慢慢的就是像掉下来一样，所以大英博物馆很着急，在2013年的时候召集了好多就世界各地的那个专家到大英博物馆来会诊，讨论怎么修复这一幅绘画。
Qiu Jinxian was once an ancient painting restoration specialist at the Shanghai Museum. In the 1980s, she was invited to the British Museum to engage in the rescue and restoration of ancient Chinese paintings. She is often called the overseas guardian of Chinese painting and calligraphy. Miss Qiu used a formula that combined starch and chemical paste to restore this national treasure, which then allowed for its digitalization.
大英博物馆这次寄来的图像呢，其他几件还可以，就直接现在打出来看，像这一些色彩上面有些地方不够匀的话呢，我们后期是可以解决的。
估计是2000多万像素的数码相机拍的。这张原作我见过，我那时候去大英的时候很仔细的去看这张原作。
The painting is an illustration of a poem by the courtier Zhang Hua of the 3rd century. He wrote this poem in the perspective of an instructress teaching court ladies how they should behave in the courtly environment. So he uses examples from history, from different scenarios to try and convince court women that they should cultivate proper behavior.
从顾恺之的《女史箴图》这幅画开始，神韵开始成为中国人文画的重要的追求。我们看一下细节，人物的表情、神态，还有肢体语言，非常的丰富，像春蚕吐诗一样的，都可以看得清清楚楚。
Admonitions of the Instructress to the Court Ladies is one of the earliest figure scroll paintings in China, dating from approximately 1,400 years ago. 700 years later, in the Scrovegni Chapel in Padua, in Italy, a famous Western figure fresco titled The Lamentations of Christ appeared. Its artist was the renowned painter Giotto de Bondone. Giotto is acclaimed as the father of European painting. It is said that when he was young, he painted a fly on his teacher's artwork. The teacher tried to shoo it away, only to discover that it was his pupil's handiwork. For Giotto, the only way was up. As with Gu's painting, the Lamentation of Christ also holds significance as a trailblazer in its era. Giotto's portrayal of religious figures is vivid and expressive. He broke the theological image norms of Byzantine painting with what is considered the first tier in the history of art. His frescoes influenced many great artists from the Renaissance period, including Michelangelo. The two paintings, though different in many ways, are of similar aesthetic importance in highlighting humanity's pursuit of the visual arts. Today, after so many years overseas, this masterpiece is finally presented in its complete form within the collection. The collection also includes over 450 other precious Chinese paintings housed in the British Museum. Many of these are from Dunhuang. Dunhuang, formerly known as Shazhou, was a major hub on the ancient Silk Road. It is to here that Marco Polo and his expedition would have journeyed to enter the Central Plains. It is seen as the gateway for cultural exchange between the East and the West. Wang Yuanlu was a Taoist abbot at the Mogao Caves during the late Qing dynasty. In 1900, while clearing sand that had accumulated in the caves, he discovered a hidden trove of Buddhist scriptures. This exceptional discovery was met with indifference from the Qing government. However, it caught the attention of British explorer and antiquarian M.A. Stein. He went to Mogao, where he came across 50,000 cultural artifacts, including Buddhist scriptures, documents, embroidery, silk paintings, and more, dating from the 4th to the 11th century. Stein was thrilled. He paid Abbot Wang 200 taels of silver for 24 boxes of Buddhist scriptures and 5 boxes of other precious antiquities. But the plundering was far from over. The treasures of Dunhuang were to be scattered far and wide. The collection includes over 1,200 paintings from the Mogao Caves, catalogued in the complete collection of the pre-Qin Han Tang paintings and the complete works of Song paintings. Many of these artworks are now housed in the State Hermitage Museum of Russia. This valuable document is a visa issued by the Beiyang government in 1914 to the Russian named S.F. Oldenburg. It allowed him to take a large quantity of Dunhuang cultural relics back to Russia. There is another long-buried history in this magnificent art museum. Kharokhoto was a historic city on the ancient Silk Road. It flourished 1,000 years ago during the heyday of the Western Xia dynasty. Its ancient pagodas housed a considerable number of artifacts from that period. P.K. Kozlov, a Russian explorer and archaeologist, arrived at this mysterious desert site some 5 years before Oldenburg went to Dunhuang. In his Mongolia and Amdo and the dead city of Kharokhoto, Kozlov wrote, "I will never forget that moment of joy when, with a few shovelfuls in the number 1 site, we discovered a small portrait painted on a piece of linen. Kozlov was delighted. He promptly sent news of his finds to Russia and dispatched several bags of artifacts. They caused a great sensation in Russia. In May 1905, Kozlov returned to Kharokhoto and took all he could find from the site. From 2 excavations, Kozlov took away over 8,000 documents and nearly 1,000 works of art. Today, almost a century later, a catalogue of these documents and artifacts held in Russia has only just been completed. Civilization transcends time and space. Today, the collection team has established a fruitful collaboration with the State Hermitage Museum of Russia. Terebanin and his son are both art photographers at the State Hermitage Museum. They took the negatives of over 350 Dunhuang cave paintings and 220 Harohoto silk paintings to China to collaborate with the collection team on their editing.
Качество книг очень высокое. Ведь мы можем рассматривать на иллюстрации и подсчитывать в шелке количество ниток. Все видно, все очень высокое качество.
The collection team has successfully obtained from Russia over 1,200 paintings on paper and silk from Dunhuang and Harohoto. This has helped fill a significant gap in the visual documentation of priceless ancient Chinese paintings. The Beijing Palace Museum, also known as the Forbidden City, served as the imperial palace during the Ming and Qing dynasties. It is not only the world's largest and best preserved ancient palace complex, but also the largest museum of ancient Chinese culture and art. The Louvre and the Palace Museum are 9,000 kilometers apart. These two imperial palaces represent the pinnacle of classical court architecture in the East and the West. They also bear witness to the artistic achievements of human civilization. At the 2021 Spring Festival Gala, one of the nationally treasured paintings from the Palace Museum brought a delightful surprise to the audience.
来和牛年相会。首先呢，是我身边的这件国宝《五牛图》。这幅流失海外多年的古画，拉开了流失文物回归的大幕。
At over 1,200 years old, 5 Oxen is the oldest extant painting on paper in China. It was painted in the Tang Dynasty by Han Huang. Han Huang served as a prime minister during the Zhenyuan period of the Tang Dynasty. One day, while he was enjoying the rural scenery, he saw several oxen grazing in the field, with pastoral melodies playing in the distance. He was captivated by the scene and subsequently created this painting. Cattle have been crucial to human production since ancient times. Images of cattle appear even earlier, around 15,000 years ago, in the cave paintings of Lashou. Records of the relationship between humans and cattle appear in the tomb murals of ancient Egypt dating back to around 1350 BC. In the 16th century, a Dutch artist, Pieter Bruegel the Elder, also painted cattle. He was at the time the most important painter in the Netherlands. This painting by him depicts the various appearances of cattle during harvest season in the countryside. Han Huang's portrayal of the oxen is detailed and lifelike. Each of the beasts has a different expression. One is panting, sticking out its tongue, and tired looking.
牛呢，在古代是很重要的，它是最基本的生产资料。画这个牛又舔又吃草，这不是仅仅的来表现动物本身写实的表现几只动物而已的，它是有政治寓意的。
Through the weary appearance of the oxen, Han Huang implies the hardships of peasant labor. The painting entered the Qing Palace in 1752. Perhaps Emperor Qianlong discerned Han Huang's intention and inscribed a poem on it, admonishing officials to take note of the hardships of the people. In the lobby of the UN headquarters, there hangs a massive tapestry, a reproduction of Pablo Picasso's Cubist masterpiece, Guernica. The painting represents the anguish of the nation at war. In this case, it is the German bombing raid on the town of Guernica and the death and suffering inflicted on civilians. China's national treasure, 5 oxen, was another item looted during the suppression of the Boxer movement by the 8-nation alliance, lost in the chaos of war. Human history has entered a new era, and Chinese civilization, like an ocean that embraces all rivers, continues to rejuvenate itself in harmony and progress. But in the first half of the 20th century, China was grappling with deep suffering. Smoke of war permeated the air, and people endured hardships amid turmoil. Countless national treasures were scattered and lost. In 1911, amid the gunfire of the Wuchang uprising, China's ancient imperial system finally disintegrated. However, that did not fundamentally change the country's destiny, but it did alter the fate of one man and the national treasures in the Forbidden City.
当时他以赏给溥杰的名义，就把他喜欢的一些东西，包括书、画、字这类东西呢，让溥杰带走了。他差不多有2000多件吧。现在我们整理以后呢，我能够核对上，现在藏在故宫的，可能有200多件。
After the September 18th incident in 1931, the calligraphy and paintings which were taken out were transported to his palace in Changchun and stored in the so-called Little White Building.
投降危机就是在伪满洲国垮台，也就是日本宣布投降之后啊，这批东西就开始失控了。他先是逃往那个大荔枝沟啊，流失了不少。那么更多的事实上没有拿走，是在属于小白楼里面，那么又遭到了伪国兵的一个哄抢，实际上这部分真正造成损失了。
Heritage conservation is mankind's common aspiration. France began legislating for it as early as 1830, with the most significant being the Historic Monuments Law enacted in 1913. Since the 20th century, countries around the world have stepped up efforts to protect cultural relics. In 1950, the newly established People's Republic of China promulgated the interim measures for the prohibition of export of valuable cultural relics and books that reversed the continual loss of cultural relics and laid a legal foundation for the collection of lost cultural artifacts.
所以那些散落在海外的国宝，包括当年小白楼流失出去的一些国宝，从50年代开始，实际上从实体性的回归到我们今天的数字化回归，它都体现了一个我们国家制度的优越。
In early 1950, Zhou Enlai received a mysterious letter from Hong Kong. It contained astonishing news. Han Huang's 5 oxen, missing for half a century, had reappeared in Hong Kong.
信中透露，这个港商啊，吴恒孙，他当时是五牛图的收藏者。他呢，因为他的企业呢，经营状况呢非常糟糕了，濒临破产了，所以他想拍卖这个手中的五牛图。 那么周总理当即就指示了我们新中国的第1任的文物局局长郑振铎，成立了以徐伯交等3位专家组成的文物的收购小组来展开工作。
This is a letter sent by Zheng Zhengduo to Xu Bojiao dated March 27, 1951. In the letter, Zheng writes, "You have secured many important things for the people and made great contribution to the country." The acquisition team had quickly begun their work in Hong Kong. At that time, the new China was in a period of economic recovery. with a per capita income in 1949 of just $27. Nevertheless, the government still used precious foreign exchange reserves to recover lost national treasures. In 1952, this much-damaged painting finally returned to the Chinese mainland. The team successfully rescued several other national treasures, including Dong Yuan's Xiao and Xiang landscape, Ma Yuan's singing and dancing, Li Tang's gathering edible wild herbs, and Zhao Ji's auspicious dragonstone and Gu Hongzhong's night revel of Han Shizai. These treasures are all now part of the collection.
This
is the sole surviving work of the Sui dynasty painter Zhan Ziqian. It is now over 1,400 years old. It's China's earliest existing landscape scroll painting. The beginning of the scroll bears an inscription by Emperor Huizong of the Song dynasty, Spring Tour by Zhan Ziqian.
游春图破解了隋以前魏晋南北朝时期山水画的作为人物画背景的这样一个体系而独立出来。
Before Zhan Ziqian, paintings prioritized figures over landscapes. Spring Tour was revolutionary in prioritizing nature above humans. In this painting, the landscape takes the central stage, while the figures are mere embellishments. Winding paths vanish into the tranquil valleys, and travelers on horseback or on foot enjoy the picturesque scenery. Although the figures are tiny, they exhibit a varied and vivid body language. However, this precious artwork suffered terribly due to the country's decline. Lo Pengzhu is a cultural relic restoration expert at the Capital Museum. Her grandfather was the renowned collector Zhang Boju.
这原来就是弓弦胡同1号这个院子的一部分，就在这一片很大一片，就这一大部分，整个全是。
Number 1 Gongxian Hutong was a fine residence, much cherished by Zhang Boju. It featured pavilions, towers, and lush gardens. Empress Dowager Cixi personally visited and praised the mansion.
听老爷说，那个弓弦胡同1号那个房子院子可大了，完了里边就是假山石啊，种的全是花花草草。为了要买这幅游春图，牺牲了他这个祖上的这个家产吧，下了狠心，把这个弓弦胡同给卖掉了。
After the painting Spring Tour went missing from the little white building, it ended up in northeast China's market stalls. In 1946, it was bought by an antiquities dealer in Beijing's Liulichang. When Zhang Boju learnt of this, fearing such a national treasure would be lost again, he immediately wrote to the Palace Museum asking the government to buy it.
当时故宫没钱嘛，所以他就着急了，他就说这个我买了，就不要流出去了。他回来就想办法，跟姥姥也商量啊，说把你的首饰都拿出来变卖，咱们把这张画一定要保存起来，不要让它流失。就把那个弓弦胡同那个宅子200根那个金条，把这个游春图给保留下来了。
In the early days of New China, Zhang Boju donated over 30 precious works of calligraphy and painting. The two most important were Spring Tour and the Jin Dynasty calligraphic work Pingfu Tie by Lu Ji. this latter is hailed as the first masterpiece of Chinese calligraphy before the preface to the Orchard Pavilion.
最后都捐给了故宫博物院，所以朋友们啊，咱们把这个打出来啊，上阳台帖是李白先生唯一留存于世的一个真迹啊。那么当年呢，这些国宝呀都捐给了故宫博物院。也就是说呢，朋友们下次到了故宫紫禁城去参观，千万不要落下一个景点叫珍宝馆，它的票还不贵，一个票10块钱。你们下次去故宫一定要看一看张伯驹先生当年捐给故宫博物院的文物。好嘞，咱们看一看牌子，朋友们啊，好嘞。
In July 1956, the Minister of Culture, Shen Yanbing, awarded Zhang Boju and his wife a commendation order. This piece of paper bears testimony to a scholar's patriotic dedication to preserving the nation's artistic tradition and his sense of responsibility for China's cultural heritage.
正是有了像张伯驹先生这么一批的这个热爱文物的一个大的收藏家、知识分子，来保护了中国的一些传统文化，才使我们今天的人能够更好的欣赏、学习中国古代的传统文化，使它呢在一代的发扬光大。
再过来一点好了，再过来，好，可以。好，闪了啊。
When Zhang Yilin first joined the team, he was still a student at China Academy of Art. Today, he's one of the team's veterans. Over 18 years, he has personally photographed many of the paintings in the collection. In order to preserve the detail of the painting's era-specific charm, the works in the collection are photographed using large format, high-definition film, which is then digitized.
精神压力其实特别大，没有去现场去感受的话，大家都感受不到的。因为我们就这么一次拍摄的机会，我们不能出任何问题。
Despite this, when his colleagues jestingly call him the first person to have access to the national treasures, Zhang Yilin feels real pride. Another 18-year veteran with the team is Professor Jin Xiaoming. Today is Sunday, and inside the Zhejiang University Museum of Art and Archaeology, a lecture titled Revisiting Classics from the Complete Works of Song Paintings to the Collection is underway. The speaker is Jin Xiaoming from the compilation team.
那么，由于千百年来中国古代的书画通过各种各样的渠道流向了世界各地，所以我们要集中的、整体的对这些东西、对这些文化遗产来考察、比较、研究，带来了很大的困难。
Nearly half of the overseas collections in the complete works of song paintings were retrieved from Japan using digital technology. From the Qin and Han dynasties, there was maritime trade between China and Japan, allowing Chinese cultural artifacts to spread to Japan. Starting from the mid-Tang dynasty, Ningbo gradually became a significant port for the eastward transmission of Chinese paintings. In the Song dynasty, Ningbo was designated as the only port for official exchanges between China and Japan and Korea. Buddhist paintings such as Arhat, 10 Kings of Hell, Assemblage of Buddhist Divinities, and Nirvana of the Buddha all went to Japan via Ningbo. Today, there are over 200 Song dynasty paintings in museums, temples, and private collections in Japan.
那么当时去了好多次，这个前后经历了好多个年头，跨度非常长。
A memorable experience for Jin Xiaoming was negotiating the photographing of wintry groves and layered banks at the Kurokawa Institute of Ancient Cultures in Japan.
当时黑川有一件非常重要的作品董源的作品，
他对后来的中国宋元及其以后的绘画产生了很大的影响。
Dong Yuan, a painter from the southern tongue of the Five Dynasties, introduced a new form called southern landscapes. His paintings covered a wide range of subjects and had a far-reaching influence with its long-lasting light ink and haze style. The wintry groves are shrouded in mist, with layered banks and shores. Willows and reeds veil the fishing boats, and smoke engulfed villages. The painter's brush moves swiftly with ever-changing lines depicting the swaying reeds and gentle slopes, sparse trees, thatched cottages in the woods, and shimmering waves, all evoking a glowing sunset scene. These works are also considered the pinnacle of Chinese landscape painting.
董源的作品只要是存世的，我们大戏都要千方百计地收进来。所以这个《寒林重定图》，它当然也是绕不过去的一件重要作品。
So began the tale of the 3 trips to Kurokawa.
然后我们就带着200斤的设备，2个人吭哧吭哧就去了。我们那时候也是刚刚第一次去日本拍摄，没有经验，然后就这么盲目的就上门了，也吃了闭门羹。
The team lacked experience with the working methods of their Japanese counterparts. As a result, the first visit to Kurokawa was a flop.
后来呢，经过与黑川古文化研究所的协商沟通，终于给我们授权了，同意我们去拍摄。
However, on the Japanese side, they only agreed to let us take 1 full image.
其实拍一张整体图的话，也就5分钟、10分钟能够解决问题的，能够拍完的。那么我还故意放慢节奏，就是给金老师留点时间，让他去沟通，最好让我们把这个局部能够现场沟通，能够拍掉嘛。
The special charm of Chinese painting lies in its vivid brushstroke techniques. An overall single image cannot guarantee the precision of detail that the collection requires. However, the Japanese insisted that they take just 1 overall picture with no partial details. Negotiations with the Japanese became deadlocked.
这个时候所长来了，他是搞文献的，他非常清晰文献的这些细节对于一个研究结论的一个作用。他这个沟通搞清楚了以后，他马上就表达了一个就是支持我们再次申请的这样的一个态度。
This was our second trip to Kurokawa. After a long wait, the Kurokawa Institute finally approved the team's application to shoot detailed sections of the painting.
于是又有了半年以后，第3次去黑川，拍摄了好多的这个局部。那么这样的话呢，完成了这个作品的全部的拍摄的这个工作。
Making a complete digital record of 1 painting took a full 3 years. A similar story would occur 7 years later. The 1,600-year-old Lingyanshan Temple is situated at the foot of the Lingyan Mountain, near the banks of the Taihu Lake in Suzhou. Since ancient times, temples have been the sacred custodians of traditional culture. Generations of patriotic monks have been involved in the rescuing and protection of national treasures. The Venerable Mingxue was an eminent monk of the Pure Land sect of Buddhism and the abbot of his temple. In the 1960s, he saved a collection of precious Ming and Qing paintings. Among them were the surviving masterpieces of the 4 great monk painters from the late Ming to the early Qing dynasties. Some of these paintings are held in the temple, making it difficult for the outside world to see them.
2012年，我们第1次去灵岩山寺，提出要拍摄他们的藏品。明学长老呢不做任何回应，
实际上就是没有答应我们。
那么我呢参与的那一次呢，回想起来是2015年。那么灵岩山寺呢，就是看着是不高，可是他走的这个山径啊，路程还是蛮长的。我们约了一个教父，人家觉得我们也怪异，为什么呢？我们这个教职是来抬摄影器材的，人家这个教职呢是做人的嘛，所以我呢是陪着江书记登山，后来就是我们在寺庙里一直等待。那这个等待过程感觉有3个小时左右。
However, Abbot Mingxue remained unmoved. He saw the masterpieces as cultural treasures, which he had tried to protect with his life during the Cultural Revolution. This had made him unwilling to exhibit them. In the following days, the team visited the temple several times. Finally, our sincerity moved the abbot, and he agreed to let us take our photographs. This is a myriad of ink dots by the individualist painter Shi Tao from the mid to late 17th century. The renowned contemporary Chinese artist Wu Guanzhong once commented, "Shi Tao is the starting point of modern Chinese art."
石涛的现代性呢是线、点、还色、墨这几个这个原料是非常重要的，但是它也不是纯抽象画。那这个把石涛作为一个现代画家的一个标准，这个也是很早在民国时期，在20世纪初已经开始了。
Shi Tao inscribed a short poem on his painting. It declares his intent to use an ugly aesthetic to subvert the rigidly codified techniques and styles of Mi Fu and Dong Yuan.
他有一些作品是比较疯狂，好像就是现代主义这种概念，好像有点表现主义的，甚至是抽象主义。西方抽象表现主义的画家从他的作品学了什么，吸收了什么，跟石涛那一代的画家有一定的关系。他这种泼墨或者把点撒在纸上是违反这种文人画的，就是无法之法。他就是一直强调他自己的这种创造性，他自己跟其他人不一样，不是因为我在找古人，而且是古人在找我。
From 2012, the team visited the Lingyanshan Temple 4 times. In May 2016, they finally completed photographing the 13 famous Qing paintings held there. Over the past 18 years, the team has gone through 3 rounds of collection from around the globe. They have assembled over 3,200 ancient Chinese paintings from overseas and more than 9,100 artworks from various museums across China. These have all been consolidated into the collection using digital technology.
回顾这段历史，我们可以得出就是这么一条结论：文美同国美呢紧紧相连，新中国成立，我国的文物事业在艰难当中起步了，几千条线变成12000多幅的画，从这个丝线里面体现了文化保护传承的思想，10个字：数字化保护、数字化共享。
汇聚了中国一代的美术，把中国的美术以一种节人的姿态推向全世界。
That really struck me was magnificent. It's really, I mean, it's an impressive thing, comprehensive because it's very, very wide-ranging, and I guess the third one is just its high quality.
Painting is probably the most difficult of all Chinese painting to see directly. It's so valuable all over the world. So here is a collection of ostensibly all of the Song paintings in the world in book form, so that everyone can now see them.
When the country thrives, so does its culture, and a strong culture makes for a prosperous nation. Looking back over 1,000 years, numerous Chinese paintings were scattered and gone astray. Today, they are being brought together, contributing to China's modern style of development. The emergence of the collection contributes to the inheritance of China's millennium-old cultural heritage. It presents the world with an important cultural legacy. It is like a symphony of Eastern art history that resounds in the exchanges and mutual learning among civilizations.